All right, what's up, folks? Welcome to the broadcast. This is going to be the 30-year-old virgin hangout. Now, that's going to come off to be a bit weird for a lot of people because in today's society, you're so used to hearing about advocates of sex and things like this, but rarely do you hear anything about advocates of virginity and celibacy. And as a 30-year-old virgin, I want to be a positive voice and inspiration to people who have refrained from sexual activity. And it's not that we're these group of people who don't feel fulfilled in life or any nonsense like that you may hear. I mean, from time to time, you have people be like, "Well, you need to get some, you need to get laid," and it's not even anything like that. It's just the fact that particularly me as a believer, I am obedient to what God says about sex, and I'm going to reserve my body for that special lady that comes along whenever that happens, should that be in God's plan for my life. But even if you're not a believer of some sort or a religious person with some sort of faith-based belief, you can still be a virgin. You can still be celibate. And I can't tell you how much in my life I've been attacked for promoting virginity and celibacy. I can't tell you how much that my virginity has been shamed. Yes, there is a such thing as virgin shaming. It's sad that such a thing like this even exists, but it's true. So this hangout is just me just talking about my ideas of virginity and being fulfilled in refraining from sexual activity and just expressing my concerns of me just wanting to save my body for when that special lady comes along. I posted a video. Matter of fact, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually play that video that I did a few days ago on being positive about virginity. So give me just 1 second while I get that ready to go here. I'm going to go ahead and screen share when I'm ready to go with that video. Let's see. Okay, go to my channel, my videos. All right, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share this video talking about my views on virginity and celibacy and how those who are virgins or celibate can be fulfilled and why they should be proud of their virginity and celibacy. So here we go. Let me start this screen share right now. Okay. No, that's not it. Here we go. Antonio Fletcher back with you once again. This video is for those who are either virgins, currently celibate, or for those who might be regretful for past decisions to have sex at a time they believe they should not have, which may have led to certain problems in their lives because of such. It is my hope through God speaking through me, the aforementioned persons may be encouraged, as there is the stigma from certain people that one hasn't truly found fulfillment in life until they have had sex at least once. There's also the stigma out there to attempt to virgin shame, as if you deserve to be outed as some oddball because you chose to refrain from sex. Now, I have to make it clear that not everyone who isn't currently a virgin or celibate makes such attacks on those who are virgins or celibate. However, in my personal experience, I've come across such attacks way too many times in too many instances. Sadly, it is not unusual to be attacked for talking positive about virginity and celibacy. Let's get into the points of why you should feel good about your decision to be a virgin or celibate. First off, I'm unashamed to say that my number one basis for my virginity is my Savior Jesus Christ. However, while I want to offer a number of reasons why the affirmation say you have to be a theist. I've outlined my view in three main points. One, this is for the men. When a woman feels you've saved yourself for her, she'll feel special. I know this through conversations from men who stayed virgins or at least celibate until they found that special lady. A lady loves to feel like someone like her was in mind, then you reserve that physical, intimate connection just for her. Your body is a big thing to a lady, if not one of the biggest things. It's a gift. Virginity or celibacy is one of the greatest gifts you can give a lady, and that you should feel good about. Two, for the ladies, much of what I said about men making women feel special with virginity or celibacy can also apply conversely from women to men. Modesty is something a lot of men highly appreciate, whether they admit it or not. Ladies, that should really make you feel good to please your man with modesty. Three, virginity and celibacy is the 100% free and fail-proof way to prevent not just pregnancy, but a plethora of other issues, pregnancy and non-pregnancy related, which come from having sex. Having personally heard from many people who are non-virgins who will tell me, that's good you waited for that special lady, man. I'm amazed at your patience and your restraint. I wish I had waited. It feels good to get such positive feedback and encouragement from this group of people. This lets you know you are doing a great thing for yourself as well as for the person you are saving yourself for. If you are a person who may feel regret from not waiting for sex, do not offer no hateful judgment or criticism. Rather, it's an encouragement to you that if you believe doing things differently before and now being celibate until that special man or lady comes along, you should no longer feel ashamed. Your now is not your past. The person you have become will be the person that special someone will want to make their own. Be encouraged and feel good. Your past is behind you. There's no reason to feel ashamed of your virginity and celibacy. Feel good about it and celebrate it proudly, as these are good virtues which are indeed worth celebrating. If you like this video, comment, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless and peace. Okay, that's it for that. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on virginity and celibacy. And I think that's something that's not talked about as much as it should be in society. You hear more about things like safe sex and comprehensive sex education, which I'm not saying those things aren't important. If you're gonna have sex, I I definitely do advocate that you do be responsible with it and you do be safe with it as possible. But again, that's just one end of the spectrum, only if you choose to have sex. This other side, the spectrum that isn't talked about is when you don't choose to have sex. So a lot of people look at sex as a need. I mean, if you want to reproduce, obviously, yes, in that sense is a need, but sex in itself is not a need. I mean, there's no way you get to 30 plus years, with virginity and sex as a need. I mean, if sex was some sort of need, then I should be like in severe health issues or dead or something, which clearly we can see that's not the case. So, yeah, this whole thing about sex as a need is just ridiculous. And can you be fulfilled and as being a virgin? Yes, you can. Can you be fulfilled in being celibate? Absolutely. And does having sex mean you are fulfilled? Absolutely not. In fact, like I said in that video, I've come across people who would tell me, man, I'm glad you waited and you had that patience and showed that restraint that you did because there's so many people who don't. And not saying that sex can't be enjoyable or things like that, but I mean, in certain aspects, it can be very overrated. And I think in many cases, virginity and celibacy is underrated. And you're not going to get very many people who's going to come out like me saying this type of stuff. What you're gonna hear more often is things like people coming out as transgender or homosexual as a brave thing, but you're not gonna hear people talking about virginity as a brave thing. That's gonna be looked down upon more often than not, and and I think that's really really sad. But I'm an advocate of virginity and celibacy because there's so many people out there who either may not be advocates of it, but don't have any issues with virgins and people who are celibate, or people who may be advocates of it, but feel like they're too ashamed to speak out and open about it because they'll be told that, well, you don't have sex, or you just some virgin square, or this and that, which I've gotten attacked before lots of times. And I've even been told that my particular demeanor about certain things like being pro-life and things like this is a product of me being just some virgin square and being anti-women's rights. And I was even told that I would more likely be pro-choice if I would just get some and get laid. I've actually been told that before. You'd be surprised the shaming and the sick crap when you are uncompromisingly an advocate of virginity and celibacy. You'd be surprised the sick crap people say about you. You'd be surprised the accusations you get. I've even been accused of masturbating to um, child pornography because, well, if he's a virgin, that must mean he must look at some outlet to get himself off. It's just what it is. What it all comes down to is just that people are not used to seeing things like virginity being advocated for and celibacy being advocated for. And when you want to look at something that's not typical and something that you may not understand, you attack it. I mean, we get told all the time that gay people are often attacked because people are attacking what they don't understand. Well, I think that's actually the case with virginity and celibacy, that people attack just what they don't understand, which I have no idea what is there not to understand about being a virgin or celibate. You just want to just do things differently than the paradigm, because the paradigm says that you need to have sex because it's some sort of inner need, it's some sort of evolutionary ingrained thing that requires you to get through in life. I've actually been told way too many times that sex is a literal biological need. And I'm not even talking about to reproduce, I'm talking about a biological need for the individual. But the problem is, oh, this is funny. I'm looking at one of the comments in the chat by Brother Wayne Fillmore. He says, "What did I just walk into? I came in at the middle of the sentence. He must get off from some sort of outlet." But more power to you. I'm not a virgin, but I support you. Well, I appreciate that, Brother Ryan. And yeah, man. And again, this is not me attacking people who are not virgins, because there are people who obviously aren't virgins, but they're very responsible about their sexual activities, and I can respect that. And there are also people who um, who just wish they just would have waited, but in fact have chosen to be celibate because they want to make better decisions in the future to reserve their bodies for those who they are truly ready to settle down with. And I think a very important distinction needs to be made between being virgin and being celibate. A virgin is just someone who hasn't had sex before physically with another person. A celibate person may have had sex before, but is choosing to refrain from sex at a later point for whatever reason. Okay, somebody is inviting me to get in here, so I'm going to send the link to this person. Oh, by the way, that's something else. If anyone wants to get into this Hangout, just send me a message to G Plus, and I'll let you in. But the condition is when you do so, you cannot give the link to anybody else because I don't think they're going to resolve the sniping issue because they're doing a change with the way Google Hangouts work and whatnot. So they're not going to do anything about the current sniping issue right now. So if you want to get into the Hangout and talk about this issue, just send me a message over a private message over G Plus, and I'll send you the link. But the condition is you can't give the link to anybody else. So I'm sending this link out to one person, and they're going to join the conversation. But if you want to join the conversation, just feel free to shoot me a message, and I'll send the link to you. But again, you cannot send the link to anybody else unless there's one exception to that rule. If the person that you would want to send the link to is somebody that I know and trust, then you might be able to send it to that person. Okay, let's see. Except somebody, I guess Wayne Fillmore is requesting me for something. I'm not sure what he means or if he's talking to someone else. Let me see. All right. So we got Mr. Remy Canadian up in here, a brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing quite well. How are you?
Not too bad. Just doing this hangout to encourage people who want to be either celibate or advocate for virginity because so many I mean not hangouts, but just so many issues in general center around um, comprehensive sex education, which I'm not against by any means, but rarely the other side of the coin is ever talked about because it's said that often that virginity is not something that's like effective or something that's most people aren't going to choose. So it's not really a topic of interest for most people. What do you think about that?
Personally, I don't think it matters what I think, but what the way my side of the story would be that I am a conservative, and that means that it's private and it's not to be discussed. And, personally discussed. So we can talk about it in a propositionally here. But when it comes to the whole of the Western society and parts of Europe being open about touching each other and being able to teach their 6-year-old the birds and the bees, yeah, that's something that is actually best left to the parent. Absolutely, it's left to the parent. The school should have no hand in it. If the school has a problem with bullies or influence in children to getting out of hand, and that pushes the public schools hand to try to teach the kids what's a good touch and what's a bad touch and when is it what to use as contraceptives, then clearly the state hasn't put in for enough emphasis on the parents to do their job.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if they're going to be teaching this comprehensive sex education stuff in school, then they need to have parental consent. I mean, that's how it was when I went to school, is that they required parental consent for this type of stuff. But it seems like with society growing more and more secular, they're trying to keep parents out of it, and they're reaching people younger and younger, and less with the parents being involved. They're, they're doing so much to sexualize our society, which pretty much goes contrary to, like, if you look at the gay marriage debate, for example, on talking about the issue of two consenting adults being able to marry each other, which is great. I mean, if you're just talking about adults, I mean, I don't agree with it, but I'm just saying in the context of sex, it should only be limited to adults. But when you have things like sex education increasing and being opened up to folks of the younger audience all the time, each and every year, that's a problem. Because at that point, you're not even talking about adults anymore. So at least with the gay marriage debate, you're dealing with adults. But with this increase in sex education becoming more and more secularized, you're not even dealing with adults anymore. When you're talking about that, they're trying to reach out to kids younger and younger and younger. And Planned Parenthood especially has been guilty of that. They have, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called It's Perfectly Normal. Planned Parenthood has this book talking about sex, and it's around the ages of like 5 to 8 year old kids being exposed to this. It's sick, man.
Yeah, like the only exception I think I've ever heard that works is if your children were born in a nudist colony or a nude society, then your children just, it means nothing to them. But otherwise, if the school is going to teach, 6 or 7 year olds, more than just simply don't let anybody touch your bikini line, anything beyond that, the kid's going to, any kid's going to be curious, and it could actually, it can actually make things worse rather than making the kid conscious and aware and defensive. It could actually make the kid have the perverted hunger at an early age, confusing the kid on what it is to actually have a healthy knowledge and understanding of what sex should be when their body actually chemically prepares them for it. At 6 and 7 year old, they don't know what they're doing, but they could hurt each other. They could hurt themselves if they're not too, too taught properly. They're not guided properly.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no reason why kids should even be talking about sex at that age. They should be talking about stuff. I mean, it should maybe go to the extent of cooties or something like that, but they shouldn't be talking about sex and talking about whatever man or woman they want to have at that age. It's crazy, and I just don't understand where these people get off with thinking that it's even appropriate for kids to even learn about something like that at that age. I mean, for crying out loud, you can't even buy alcohol until you're 21. You can't even buy a cigarette until you're 18 in most states. But they expect kids to be able to handle something like, how can they have no issue with kids handling sex at that early age, but it's all of a sudden a problem when they dealing with smoking and alcohol? And I'm not advocating, I'm just saying it's just clearly inconsistent.
Yeah, like I was going to bring up that. Oh, I will bring up one application I almost consent to with teaching younger individuals under who are not even adolescent or they're prepubescent, is that we are in an age where pedophilia is on whatever becoming a problem in the entire world, because we're in, because our morals are loose. We have no standard anymore, and as a planetary whole. And so in that, I would say that it can have its proper place to teach kids to an extent of, if your parent touches you more than just giving you a hug and a peck on the cheek, then the child should understand that it's, if the parent is doing more than washing them in the tub and it becomes weird, the child should actually be able to report that.
Yeah, man, and it's really sick to where it's even being woven into things like when you talk about that 50 something, early 50 something year old transgender dude that wants to act like a girl. I mean, just the implications of all this is just horrifying to say the least. I mean, will it get to the point and and I know there's gonna be people out there saying you're just imagining things and you're just throwing things out there that will never happen. But I mean, come on. It's not like there's no sort of history behind this stuff. It's not like this stuff haven't happened in past societies before. There's nothing new under the sun. If anybody think any society isn't capable of that, then you wouldn't even have people who are trying to basically applaud pedophiles. Like Slate, for example, the media publication Slate is literally applauding a pedophile just simply because he didn't actually or have never actually touched a child in any sort of sexual manner. But he admits to having those sensations and imaginations in his mind.
Yeah, that's where I agree. That's where I draw the line on the idea of law interfering with people's lives on the grounds of pedophilia. Is if a person, shows the inability to touch another person, and they're found having seen something, whatever it may be, remotely, 16-year-old or whatever. If they're clearly showing no intent and no capability and no comprehension of the imagination or whatever to touch another individual under the age of 17, they should not actually go to jail, but they should be under observation to a point. But if you're going to give someone 2 years because they've got a swimsuit picture, that's how bad it is in some states. Then I'm sorry, but that should not be grounds to throw someone in the slammer for 2 years to whatever. That's not. That's ridiculous.
I hear you exactly. And when you have people out there who have who have these criticisms and these scathing analysis of like the Catholic Church, for example, and I completely agree with them that the Catholic Church has been having a horrifying history of pedophilia within its ranks, and I have no problem with them criticizing them and calling them out for the sick practices that has been done in the Catholic Church. But the problem is that when you have the same people who would criticize that, but then basically applaud and protect another pedophile on publications like Slate just because he hasn't actually touched a child. So basically, the thought of it is okay, and not touching is okay, and they even had a vision of a little girl, probably about 6 to 8 years old, twirling in like a ballerina suit or a dress, or I don't know if it was it was some sort of dress, twirling around. Just the imagery behind it was sick. So it's okay for those sorts of images to be had, but I mean, we actually touch is a problem. I just think the fact that they even did that is sick. I mean, Jesus himself said, even if you
Yeah.
look at a woman with lust,
Yeah.
then you've already committed adultery with her in your own heart. So even
Yeah.
the very thought of it is sick enough to me and
Mhm.
should not be applauded in any capacity whatsoever.
Mhm. Like I would, yeah, like in many cases, like a parish uh, congregation member who hasn't touched a child, for them to stalk a child it should easily be an offense, because they're impoaching on another person's uh, private private time and their personal space. If your intentions are to follow this 17, 16-year-old without their consent, then that is a ill intent and should be I don't know whether it be thrown in jail, but definitely under somebody's observation. Somebody should be keeping tabs on that individual if they're going to be following in any degree a underage person.
It's still gotten to the point to where even medical professionals are trying to justify it by saying, well, pedophilia is not really something that's chosen. It's a desire. Like,
Well, to some
and
degree it is, but just like
well,
homosexuality, it's the problem of being able to act on it, or to abstain from it.
right, and yeah, I don't deny that the
Yeah.
desire may not be chosen, but I mean, the whole problem is how they try to justify it. I mean, these are the sorts of people that need to get serious mental help,
Mhm.
and they're basically saying that these people are perfectly fine and they don't really need to get help.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, so maybe we should get back to the idea of teaching the public system of any country having taken the authority to teach the kids. Maybe we should go back on that. It's gotten to the point where it's not just pedophilias, but it's actually kids are actually, very, very underage, are actually starting to experiment with each other before they even know what they're doing. There's actually cases in the States, and I don't know if it's in the UK or not, where kids as young as 5 years old are sneaking into the toilet and touching each other.
Really, I
And,
didn't.
and it's not an exploratory, hey, I'll show you. Apparently, according to reports, it goes on longer than that.
You've got to be
So,
kidding me. I didn't even know about these such reports.
so it may be 1% of the time, or less than 1% of the time it ever happens, but that's still a result of the school system thinking it's their responsibility.
Yeah, wow. I don't even know what to say about that.
Mhm.
What it comes down to is it's an increasing assault on the traditional family. That's the one thing right there.
Mhm.
It first starts with removing the authoritative father figure out the home. That's where it first starts. And then it eventually trickles down to even just removing the family as an authority altogether. So the people who are promoting these sorts of things and the sexual revolution that's happening in our culture, these people literally have a huge issue with the traditional family. That's their biggest, well, right under Jesus Christ, the traditional family is their biggest hurdle to their worldviews and their goals. I mean, when you can take away the traditional family, then pretty much anything goes. Because the traditional families, obviously, you have the man, the woman, and the children, and it's it's a structure that is centered in in the Judeo-Christian faith and centered in many religious faiths as well. And it's no doubt the structure which has led to the overwhelming prosperity of countries like the United States. The traditional family element is just one of the single most important aspects we have in our culture. And there is a culture war to eliminate any sort of presence of that whatsoever. Because if you can keep the traditional family intact, then they can't get the sort of goals they want to implement to take the country and the world in a different direction. So, what do you think about the whole assault on a traditional family?
Hmm. I'm not sure where to start, man. It's been an issue since '91, around there.
Well, well, I'll actually start here. One of the things which has really set with me specifically, me growing up and observing a lot of this myself, is in the black community, there has been a just huge breakdown of the traditional family in the black community.
Hmm.
Oh, about 30 some odd years ago or so, the single motherhood rate for Black America was around 30%. Here we are 30 plus years later, and it's like 70 plus percent.
Hmm.
And yeah, and it's then led to basically 6% of the population. Blacks make 6% of the population, but when you look at murders and FBI statistics, 6% of the population of blacks commit 52% of the crimes. That's not good. That a population that low or that in the minority is committing more than half of the crimes or half of the murders. That's not good at all. And that is no doubt due to the huge breakdown of the traditional family in the black community. Because most of these homes are single mothers, and I'm not saying that there aren't good single mothers out there. There are lots of good single mothers out there who have raised fantastic children. But at the same time, the breakdown of the traditional family absolutely just cannot be denied. And more often than not, when a child just lacks that fatherhood element, there's just something missing in that kid's life, and um, the result of that has led to things like increased gang violence, increased incarceration rate, um, and just increased deaths of the young black population. Like, there is no reason why you should hear about over 100 some odd deaths. Because I think, if I remember correctly, it was either last month or a couple of months ago, there was over 100 shootings in Chicago in 1 month. 1 month. And tell me that that has nothing to do with the breakdown of the traditional family in the black community. It is, it's no doubt probably the single greatest cause of it. And these people are going to only wage war on a traditional family more and more and more. That's the reason why they've done so much to basically destroy men on TV. They have gone to the effect of always trying to make the man look stupid and to make the man look like he doesn't have the clue where, and then the woman has to come and save the day.
Yeah,
And
well, we've got a prime example. Well, whatever example you can pull from all Married with Children. The same guy who plays Al, he's playing in a TV show called The Modern Family. You can see night and day that now he's just a pushover. He's just a pansy. It's whatever everybody else wants. He just goes along with it. But he'll put his 2 cents in here and there. But otherwise, he's just whatever, man, whatever you want. You know, if you want to do this, go ahead. I'll help you. Meanwhile, back when he was Al Bundy, it was no, but you got to listen to the man, even though he's an idiot.
Yeah, man, you've seen way too much of that. I mean, you've seen these men being pushovers. You've seen dudes constantly get their butts kicked by women and all sorts of crazy stuff, man. Um, and so many times they're just trying to feminize men. I mean, for crying out loud, they were even trying to make Captain America gay. And it was, I can't remember the liberal publication, but one of them was mad because Captain America was too heterosexual. I'm like, what?
I don't remember hearing about him being romantic with anybody but that Betty girl. That's it.
Exactly. Like, what do these people have to gain? And come on, tell me that there's no sort of some sort of mafia out there on the LGBT side. You can't tell me that one doesn't exist because they're trying to they're trying to shove it down just about every aspect of our culture. There is no
Mhm.
look. If you want to accept the fact that gay people should be able to get married, okay, that's one thing. But saying that it should be shoved down every aspect of our culture, like let's turn Captain America gay, or let's give the main character chick in Frozen a gay girlfriend and all this other stuff. Come on. The bottom line is, despite things like gay marriage being passed and people in general becoming more acceptable of homosexuality, the fact of the matter is the overwhelming majority of the country is still heterosexual, and the overwhelming majority of the world is still heterosexual. And the success, the amazing success of Hollywood has been a product of the heterosexual union, not of the homosexual union. That's just a fact. I mean, when you look at things like Lion King, for example, what you got there? Mufasa and Sarabi, a heterosexual union, and they have a child, Simba. And of course, there's the rotten family member Scar who wants to tear the family apart and become king because he's just a selfish bastard. But you still the rock solid element behind that is the heterosexual union. And then when Simba grows up and he has his daughter, his daughter I think her name was Kiara. She had an interest in Kovu. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you wrote it right there on the side there, Kovu. And yeah, the heterosexual message continues there, and it's good and it works. It's not something to be scoffed at. It's not something to be looked down upon. And I even know a lot of gay people who are like, man, there is no reason for them to be shoving this down our throats. And they'll be like, yeah, I support gay marriage, but at the same time, it's like, come on, that's no reason to um, change what the cornerstone of what has attributed to the success of things like Hollywood and of this country with the heterosexual union. There's no reason to change that for the sake of being more and more progressive, quote unquote, and accepting.
Well, I'm pretty sure the major uh, problem is actually because it's a repeat of what happened in late 60s and 70s when nearly every superhero had a female counterpart. And we accepted that around the 80s. People, maybe there's the odd person who just still couldn't let it go. There's a Batwoman and there's a Spider Woman and all that. But it's come to the point where it's no longer your little brother who's trying to jump on the wagon with you. It's your little cousin too. Where there's nothing unique,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing creative, there's nothing original anymore. They just gotta, they have to either they have to make their a counterpart to something that already exists. So there's already a black Captain America. I'm pretty sure there's a female Captain America, but I don't think she lasted that long. But that's fine, that's great. People love that idea because diversity holds us together. Diversity is it's the salt that makes the food worth tasting. But when you have a sexual orientation saying no, you have to accept me, well, as if they're a race, as if they're a skin color, as if they've gone through 1,000 years of turmoil, and then they're saying, well, no, now you need a gay Namor or whatever the Aquaman is. Sorry, but that's just them adding on to the counterpoint of society where people were already pissed off at the female counterpart and the black counterpart. It's okay now. But because even more than half the community is okay with there being a female Thor. But when you gotta have a female Thor who's a lesbian, I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying I know that's not what she is. She's heterosexual. But I'm just saying if that was the case, then it's obviously special. It's a special condition. It's special. It's a special case. Where they have to. They're forced to. It's not It's not. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like It. It was the right move. It's not the right step. It was just forced in there because well, now you gotta have your token, and you got all these. What about gay?
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
all it is. That's all it is. It's not. It's not. It's not. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't feng shui like a Batgirl or Batwoman. It doesn't feng shui like a Superwoman. It doesn't. It's not like the daughter of Spider-Man and Mary Jane. It's not because those actually had a logical backstory. No, instead now it's like well no let's turn Namor into a homosexual. But he had a wife for 50 years. What are you going to do? Oh, no, he's gay. Wow.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, but that's just stupid right there. No, no, we gotta accept that.
It really
You know,
is ridiculous, man. Here's the thing, man. I can dig if like there's an original series of anything and the creator of that series want to have the lead character as some like a gay man or a lesbian chick. I'd be that's all right, fine, whatever. If they wanted to do that, that's their show. They have to every right to do that. But when you have someone that has the lead character a heterosexual, and you have people looking at them, forcing them to either have that person gay or have gay characters in it, then that's another problem. Then that's another problem. That's an issue. Here's the thing, man. I don't care if a TV show wants to have a sitcom and the only people who are ever in there are white folks. I don't care. Even as a black folks, I don't care. That's their show. They can have whatever they want on their show. If that's if they only want to have only white folks on their show, then that's their prerogative,
yeah, I'd actually
and I
say
just won't watch it.
I'd actually say the opposite can be okay too. In
Have
the recent Batman versus Superman, Batman, sorry, no, Perry White is played by Lawrence Fishburne. I thought that
mm-hmm,
was actually a brilliant because he plays it with his skill. He does a great job. I don't, and I don't care if he's black.
Exactly.
Sorry, but I've said it in other chat rooms that Michael Duncan played Kingpin in 2000-ish, whatever, Daredevil. He did a great job. I mean, well, the role is actually meant for it. It's okay. It's not
Mm-hmm.
whitewashing anymore. Nobody should care about whitewashing or blackwashing or whatever. It
Exactly.
shouldn't be an issue anymore.
Exactly. And we weren't having these discussions, in previous years. Like in Frasier, for example, the overwhelming majority of people on that show were white, but from time to time, you'll have a black person on there. Like there was this one black lady that was basically giving Frasier a hard time. But she was one of the few black people that ever appeared on that show. But then when people turn around at that time, like, well, why ain't there more black people on that show? I love that show. That show was funny. And I didn't care about the fact that they had white people most of the time. It just never crossed my mind. It wasn't a big deal. But people get all this PC nonsense in them, the social injustice warrior mindset. You have to have everything seem more inclusive. Like if you have, and I don't think the intent of the creators behind stuff like Frasier was to be racist or to seem like they weren't inclusive because most of the people on that show just happen to be white. There's no reason to think that the intent behind the show was racism because or just being only inclusive to white people and exclusive to people of other races. There's no reason to think that at all.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, get back to the issue of teaching the youth to accept and to support the LGBTQ community. By the way, Q means queer for what I'm taught, and queer means gay, so it's redundant. Anyways, um, it's not really an issue to teach a kid that it's okay for someone to be gay. It's an issue to teach a child, well, if your friend grows up and they're in college with you and they want to tell you all about their escapade, that's not okay. It's just as okay as you telling me what you did in the washroom. I don't need to know. I don't. So if you want to teach our kids who are, between the age of 8 and 12, to prepare for somebody who's going to tell you, oh, I love to kiss my boyfriend. Meanwhile, I've got, the same equipment. That's not okay because you don't really, well, in public, anyways, it's not okay. In private, sure, if you want to talk like that, sure. Because straights talk like that in private too, but you don't really hear people in public saying in the hallways or in the park saying, "Oh man, she French kissed me so well, so good, I could kiss her all night. Oh man, I got my tongue in there and I could lick her." No, you don't. You don't have them talking about how they felt each other up. You don't. But we're supposed to accept that today. That's because we're supposed to be tolerant. But it's not. That's not my. It's not the. That's not the overall issue. The overall issue should be, kid, that somebody 1 out of 10 people is going to grow up having some sort of drawing towards towards the same gender. That's okay. That should be okay. That's fine because God created them to have a diverse brain. But it's not okay for you to teach your kid. Well, you should encourage them to talk about how they feel, what they would do, what they have done, what they're going to. You don't even do that for straight kids.
Exactly.
That's improper attitude. That's improper behavior for any child to grow up with. Okay, Tommy and Tommy and Susie, I want you to play out a scenario today in drama class because me and your drama teacher are are we're talking behind the scenes, whatever, in the faculty lounge. So for sex ed, extra credit, if you can add a sexual scenario where you speak aloud about how you want to touch each other, that you get extra remarks because that's supporting homosexuality and LGBT whatever. No, you'll never see that, or at least I hope you don't. So, but apparently, but if we're going to be teaching kids it's okay to support that kind of behavior, I'm going to have to put my foot down too.
Yeah, man, I hear you, it's interesting you bring up the whole point about tolerance and whatnot. Here's the thing, man. Tolerance used to be basically this. I may not agree with what you say, but I will offend to the death your right to say it. But now tolerance has become, well, you better not disagree with what I say at all, unless you become bigoted and non-inclusive and things like homophobic and whatnot. So tolerance, the definition of tolerance has changed. It's no longer you disagreeing with somebody but defending their right to say it anyway. It's basically you must accept certain views, otherwise you're a bigot. So they've tried to change the definition of tolerance, and if you disagree with things like homosexuality, for example, or in transgenderism, if you disagree with those things, oh, you're a bigot. There's no sort of real tolerance there like there used to be. But here's the issue. If you tolerate a view, the fact that you tolerate anything presupposes that you think the tolerated view isn't true. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to tolerate, you would agree with it anyway. And it would sit and and it would be settled very well in your worldview. It wouldn't be something you have to tolerate. So the true definition of tolerance should really mean that you presuppose something isn't true, but you tolerate it for the sake of the fact that you're a human being and you accept the fact that people are going to disagree on certain things, and that's fine. But that's not the way it is anymore. You have no right to disagree with certain things anymore. You have no right to, especially if you're someone like a Judeo-Christian believer, you have no right to disagree with something like homosexuality and transgenderism. And even those things don't even require you to be a believer. Heck, I even have spoken to atheists who have disagreed with things like transgenderism. And they've been touted as these bigoted folks who are transgender phobic and all sorts of crazy crap, man. It really has nothing to do with whether you're a believer or not. I mean, it just so happens that most people who are believers happen to disagree with those things, but the spectrum can go across the board to people who are even not religious. So what it all comes down to is it doesn't matter whether you are a believer or not, whether you're religious or not. There are certain views you are no longer allowed. I mean, I ain't gonna say no more. Well, I was right the first time. There are certain views in today's society you are no longer allowed to disagree with. Otherwise, you're a bigot. You're no longer allowed to disagree with homosexuality or transgenderism. Otherwise, you're a bigot. You aren't allowed to disagree with groups like Black Lives Matter if you're a white person. Otherwise, you're a racist. There's certain groups that are exclusive now to where you can't disagree with them anymore. You can't disagree with their views and certain things. I don't know how many times I've seen get white people accused of being racist because they disagree with certain things behind Black Lives Matter, and that's just nonsense. I mean, and yeah, this can go in a whole number of different directions, but the whole implications behind tolerance is the people who are in certain areas of influence, like academia and Hollywood. They want to change what the definition is because they have certain views on what they want society to be like. And people are getting to the point to where they're tired of hearing this. That's why you've had an increase of things like anti-feminism. Today's third wave feminism is another thing that you can't disagree with. Otherwise, you're a misogynist. And even women today who disagree with things like feminism, oh, they have internalized misogyny. It basically comes down to the idea that if you disagree with certain worldviews today, you're just a bad person. You're just a bigot. You're just a hateful individual, and you need to be ostracized out of society because that's the social justice thing to do. That's the progressive way to be today. But I come across women all the time, especially me being an active pro-lifer, of women who do not agree with abortion. And they're being told all the time that they're anti-women because you'll hear women, pro-choice women, look at someone like me and be like, well, you're a man. Who do you think you have a right to speak on the issue because you have a penis? You're not a lady. You're not a woman. But then a woman will speak against it. And then I ask them, well, what do you think about this woman speaking against abortion? What are you going to tell her? And then they was like, well, she just have internalized misogyny. It's a number of intellectually dishonest angles they come at these things from. When are we going to understand that disagreeing with something doesn't make you a hater? When are we going to understand that you do not have a right not to be offended? If you want to offend people who disagree with things like feminism, homosexuality, Black Lives Matter, people who hold those views and want to offend other people is perfectly fine. But the converse direction of those, you're all of a sudden homophobic, you're a misogynist, you're a racist. This is what our society has become today. And it's getting more and more out of control. So, you have any thoughts on that? Well, I don't know if he's there or not, but I'm going to play this video real quick. Just give me just a moment. And it touches on what we're talking about with them trying to reach sex ed for kids of younger ages. Give me just a sec while I get it. All right, here we go. This is sick, folks.
Parents gathered here at Queen's Park on Tuesday for yet another protest against Premier Kathleen Wynne's new sex education curriculum. They are outraged over what they say is material that is not age appropriate, and when it comes to their children, they should have a choice.
To say no for this program. It's too early for that. Let them be a kid.
We might be able to forget about gas plants and billion-dollar boondoggles, but the moment that they reach into our homes and dictate to us what is age appropriate and what is not, they are violating our rights as parents.
Have a curriculum that really is based on science, really is based on facts, not just an agenda that's driven through on parents without proper consultation.
It needs to be considered with opinion of other people, not just whoever was elected.
We take our kids to school to learn and to get instructions, know how to read, how to do everything, not to just get into something totally different.
If the majority are saying no, that means there is something wrong with the program.
Consent in Canada is 60. Kathleen Wynne wants to present it at 6. We all know how her math turns out.
Public education system is funded through our taxation. So to introduce the new program without asking parents, without asking everyone who wanted to say something, I truly believe that it's a violence.
The Liberal government and their irresponsible kind of behavior. They're supposed to consult parents first.
We understand some of the things in the curriculum are okay, but some of the things I think they're up to us to teach.
Some materials should not teach kids under 13 years old.
Children at that age, they don't really know.
Against my religion, against my culture, everything.
I'm a Christian, but there's lots of people from different religions here that are wanting to fight for their kids.
Today's protest comes on day 2 of Ben Levin's child pornography sentencing hearing. Now, Ben Levin was Deputy Education Minister when Kathleen Wynne was the Education Minister under Dalton McGuinty's government.
He's certainly been involved in this process since the beginning. He was part of the team that drafted the 2010 curriculum.
It is disgusting that a man who, even though they say did not have anything to do with it, it's very, when you look at the Deputy Minister of Education's other job responsibilities or current job responsibilities now, he had those responsibilities when he was in office.
Someone like that who's had any fingerprint on this, then it should be looked at. The Liberal government's new sex education curriculum is set to roll out in September. And in the meantime, the protests will continue.
She should revise it. Children are the responsibility of the parents. We don't want her teaching a perverted sexual curriculum.
I like the fact that you look around and this represents Canada right here, all the different faces, different religions, and we're all here together, come together for our children.
And we hope that our movement will take an effect.
I have taken a day off just for this thing, and I'm going to take all the days off whenever we get a time.
I'm Emily Pratt for the Rebel.media.
Okay, the reason why I played this video is because there was someone in the comments who said, let me scroll up here. Let's see. Michael said, who the hell is teaching kids in school to accept anyone talking about sex in 3rd grade? Well, you got the proof right in front of you, bro. And I don't know, this isn't up for debate, man. You can't argue against this. And of course, if you want to have an argument for it, and you want to discuss the issue, then you can send me a message over G+, and you can come here, we can talk about it. So, what's it gonna be, Michael? Do you want to come in here and talk about it, or do you want to just sit here and run your mouth in the text chat? You can. It's your choice, man. But getting back to this whole issue about the evolution of sex in our secular society, it's happening. There's no question that it's happening, and it's getting much and much worse. I mean, all it takes is a little research to find this out. Planned Parenthood had this book called "It's Perfectly Normal," and it was trying to expose kids. Let's see. Let's look it up. It's perfectly normal. This is a Planned Parenthood's book to reach, and this was reached to young children. It's called "It's Perfectly Normal: Changing Bodies, Growing Up, Sex and Sexual Health." And just look at the animations. Just look at all this. They're trying to reach children with this material at an age inappropriate time. There was no reason for this. And you can see in here in the screen share some of these pictures, and it's sick. Now you tell me that there isn't some sort of angle going on in our society to try to sexualize our kids, and it doesn't even stop there. The supersexualization of children. Time to take notice. I remember visiting a first grade class sometime around 1999 to discuss with the students the basics of human reproduction. I had my fair share of invites over the years to speak to young children about various issues pertaining to sexuality, but on this particular day, a totally unexpected question was posed to me during my discussion with this class. Out of the blue, this 6-year-old boy raised his hand and asked me, "Dr. Fred, Did the president really pull his pants down and have that lady kiss his privates? Within seconds, virtually all the other students in class started nodding their heads and chatting out loud. I heard that too, Dr. Fred. Oh, that's gross. Is that true, Dr. Fred? Wow, I said to myself. Welcome to the super sexualized world of young children. If you think about it, the average child in the United States today has countless opportunities for exposure to sexualized messages every day. Television, music, billboards, print media, internet, cell phones, and communication devices, cable, movies, and of course, interaction with peers and adults offer children with numerous possibilities where they can encounter sexual messages of all sorts. In some homes, kids are only a click away from seeing sexual intercourse in all its possible permutations, everything from your run-of-the-mill sexual intercourse to some pretty weird and disturbing sexual acts. Others are still being exposed to actual sexual behavior in their daily lives that gets played out by the adults and older siblings around them. Irrespective of a child's particular situation, you can bet that children are being exposed to numerous sexual messages every day of their lives. In fact, by the time a child reaches puberty, she or he has likely been exposed to thousands, if not tens of thousands, of sexualized messages. Think about that for a moment. Constant exposure to sexualized messages, day in and day out, at lightning speed from nearly every direction for their entire childhood. Unfortunately, this exposure occurs far too frequently without the guidance and intervention from parents that is necessary to help children sort through and make sense of it all. Often, these sexual messages are not only explicit, but also violent and demeaning in nature. Awash in male dominant and female submissive imagery, misogynistic, heterosexist, homophobic, and sensational. So make no mistake about it, your child will be exposed to an enormous amount of sex-related content no matter how hard you try to shield them from it. They're creating a generation of super sexualized children. A significant number of children are actually demonstrating sexual interest and or sexual behavior at earlier ages than ever before in our society. Kids are being exposed to sexual matters that were previously only in the purview of adults, and the greater the exposure, the greater the consequences can be. When parents fail to counter and buffer the plethora of sexual stimuli that confront children, they are left to their own devices to manage what they experience. Unfortunately, many will be confused and have difficulty making sense of and putting into proper perspective what they are exposed to. Some will actually try to act out or mimic what they have been exposed to. Others may be developing a Boolean persona will begin to incorporate sexual behavior into their Boolean behavior and engage in a hurtful or intrusive sexual behavior towards other children. Frankly, I am alarmed over the number of 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-old children that molest other children. I have never received so many phone calls from school staff about this problem as I have the past 10 to 15 years. The biggest impact, however, that the supersexualization of children can have is its overall looming effect on the day-to-day existence of kids. Sexuality becomes much more of a player than it should, irrespective of the child's age. It's as if the children's normal curiosity towards sexuality gets ratcheted up a number of notches as if on steroids. Consequently, we see things like the following far too frequently. A 5-year-old uses the words, "that's so gay," without having a clue what they mean. Some young children become overly curious and actually touch each other's genitals as opposed to just looking. Children have a very normal curiosity about basic sex differences / similarities. They don't typically touch others' genitals. Others may display adult-like sexual behavior. The 8-year-old asks questions about dildos and wants to know how a man can become a woman. The 10-year-old asks about rimming and is it okay to do. But in spite of this super sexualized world, there's good news and reason to remain optimistic. The reason I say this is actually very simple. Just become an approachable parent on all matters sexual. That's it. You take it upon yourself to speak honestly, lovingly, and on a regular basis with your child about the sexualized world around her, you will help her make sense of it, help her to put it in an understandable context, and help her to counter any potential negative consequences to all this exposure. As parents, we can't hide our children in the closet. The world is sexually complicated for all children, but our job is not to run away from it. Rather, we need to make sure we speak, listen, and guide our children every day so that they can make sense of their sexualized world. Remember two very important facts. One, your voice as a parent is more powerful than your child's peers in the media. And two, talking about sex and sexuality with your child will not increase their interest in sex, only help them act more responsibly. It really is this simple. Oh, and my response to the 6-year-old boy who asked me about the lady who kissed the president's private parts. Wow, you heard that too? I said, well, you know, kids, as strange and weird as that sounds, there are some adults who love each other who will do that. Oh, Dr. Fred, that's disgusting, could be heard among the many oohs and ahs after I said it. Within a few moments, all quiet down and the students moved on with being 6-year-olds. You see, kids at that age really don't care a whole lot about sex. They just want their curiosity quelled and things put into context for them. As parents, we neutralize the onslaught of this highly sexualized world for our children when we answer their questions and act proactively by helping them make sense of the sexual messages they encounter. I didn't want to ignore this little boy's question, as shocking as it was. I put the behavior of oral sex into a context where it certainly belongs, and I attached the value of love to it. Okay, so I may have stretched the truth a bit with the love thing, but all in all, I thought it was a pretty good response. What do you think? Of course, we're going to have instances where kids are going to run into this type of things, whether parents want them to or not. In many ways, it's unavoidable. And I'm not talking about parents just like shielding their kids from it forever, because obviously it gets to a point to where parents have to educate their kids about sex. The problem is not merely the fact that kids will eventually run into it, but the fact that you have secular media who is basically accepting it. They are promoting it. They are not only, it's not only the fact that kids run into it, but the fact that they put it to their faces. These kids are being produced with, or being exposed to something heavy that they have no business being exposed to, maybe until they're like 11 or 12 years old. There is no reason why those parents should have even been out there protesting the curriculum from that school with putting this sort of sexual education in front of their kids. There was no reason for the parents to have been there. That should have never even been brought up in any capacity, in any level of academia. Well, the levels of academia that have to do with grade school and whatnot, it shouldn't have been brought up in any capacity at all to expose young kids to that kind of material. And as it was clearly said in the video, you have people from different religions, different perspectives, different backgrounds, religious, non-religious. People are seeing the problem with this. And like I said earlier, at least we talk about stuff like gay marriage. At least you're talking about two consenting adults. But when you're talking about sex education, the increase of the society becoming more and more secular is slowly lowering the age, slowly trying to take the parents out the equation to the point to where you get this sort of thing happening. So if you think that there is no angle in our society at all to expose kids more and more to sex and to try to take the parents out the home, then you're only deceiving yourself. And there are so many, there's just countless instances of things that you can observe of the advocacy for the age of consent to be dropped. Like, I'm going to show you just one example out of many of that. Just give me one moment. Let's see. Check this out, folks. Bernie Sanders Bernie Sanders campaign allows a child sex advocate to publish on their website. Both redistribution, we can have a civil disagreement. Taxing the 1%, we can also disagree. But liberalizing child sex laws, that calls for more than a civilized disagreement. When it comes to child sex molestation or pedophilia, we're pretty intolerant. We've got an archaic but hard and fast rule here at the WLC. You touch a child sexually, you deserve a bullet. That's how I feel. we walk it back precisely zero. It's out there. We said it in response to a disgusting Salon article, Salon.com article written by a pedophile. On that same hard line, we have zero tolerance for people who want to change child sex laws just so they can fondle little future voters in the back of a panel. This little thing just popped up. In the back of a paneled van. Yes, it's still unacceptable, even in a Prius. You're a sick pervert if you think that's okay, and you're also a sick pervert if you try to understand or normalize such behavior. And you're a sick pervert if you allow child molestation sympathizers to write on your website, even if that sympathizer isn't writing about what he or she would like to do with a child and mommy or daddy isn't around. I guess that's just a joke right there. You're also a sick pervert if you drive a Prius. That's funny. But anyway. Well, Bernie Sanders, self-appointed hero, and Sanders' clause to the everyman has given a platform to a liberal child sex sympathizer on his website. The article itself, written by Judith Levine, is quite mundane, titled Two Ways to Fix Income Inequality. It calls for using government assistance or an increased minimum wage to improve the lot of America's poor. But Levine is best known for the book she wrote 13 years ago titled Harmful to Minors, The Perils of Protecting Children from Sex. Available in its entirety online, the book takes a host of positions on sexual matters that are best well outside the American mainstream. Levine describes society's fear of pedophiles as overblown in the book and argues child pornography is rarely produced, usually not very pornographic, and not worthy of heavy police pursuit. She also suggests lowering the age of consent and complained American society is too quick to condemn relationships between young teenagers and adults. So yes, Bernie Sanders gave this woman a platform. Again, if you think it's totes okay to molest a child, or that as an American society, we're too harsh on people who molest children, you're a sick pervert. But these liberal views on child sex are not new ideas. Actually, they've been quite mainstream for a while. Shocker, I know. American society as a whole is rightfully disgusted by pedophiles. In other countries like Europe and Canada, child sex isn't so much of a big deal. Yet another reason why Europe sucks. Former NHL star Theo Fleury, if that's how it's pronounced, called Canada the Disneyland for pedophiles and has petitioned the government to make punishments more harsh for child fondlers. Germany's Green Party leader regrets a petition to decriminalize child sex, a petition he made 20 years ago. Best of all, this comes to us from the Netherlands when a Dutch court said it was totes okay for a pedophile advocacy group to continue. I don't know what that word says. I think it says you wouldn't. I'm guessing it's pronounced. In Begard 40 sees this as a victory for freedom of expression. He thinks society can be very overprotective. A child can see a lot of violence on television. On every cartoon, there's violence. On movies, people get killed, he explains. When Janet Jackson's breast is shown at the Super Bowl, people say, oh, children are watching this. Nakedness and everything concerning sexuality is a taboo and violence is the norm. And I think that should be the other way around. He further believes that almost everyone has pedophile feelings in them. Only the percentage is different. Some have more than others. We still maintain bullets are best. Make no mistake about it, the left is trying to mainstream pedophilia. we're seeing more evidence of the left trying to sympathize with pedophiles. Remember the 6salon.com articles? Now, I mentioned earlier in this hangout that it was Slate, but it was actually salon.com. So that's my correction on that. But anyway, he says, remember the 6salon.com articles? They want us to understand their plight. Understanding comes before acceptance, and after acceptance may be a little lenience, and before we know it, the unthinkable is allowed. It's a slippery slope, and if you don't think it can happen here in the USA, click on the links we provided and do some research. Please seriously do some research before commenting below. Otherwise, what are you even doing expressing an opinion on it in the first place? So that's it for that. If you want to come in the room and talk about this issue, you can send me a message over G Plus, and I'll send the link to you. But you cannot send the link to anybody else. That's the condition. But there's no doubt that they're trying to reach kids with sex. It's not a secret, and you can deny the evidence right in front of your face, but it's happening. Let me see. There's been Remy posted a link here. Let me see what it's about. Okay. This looks interesting. PBS News Hour. Okay. The case for starting sex education in kindergarten. Who here has been in love? Eniak Pfeiffer asked a crowd of Dutch elementary school students. It's a spring morning in Utrecht, if that's even how it's pronounced. I probably butchered that name. And the St. Jan, I'm not going to hear pronounce that. Okay, I'll try. St. Jan de Dapper, I guess. I don't know. Elementary school gym is decked in heart-shaped balloons and streamers. Pfeiffer and Pepijn are hosts of a kids' television program in the Netherlands, and they're performing a song about having a crush. Kids giggle at the question. Hands. Little and bigger shoot up. Welcome to Spring Fever Week Welcome to Spring Fever Week in primary schools across the Netherlands, the week of focused sex ed classes for 4-year-olds. Of course, it's not just for the 4-year-olds. 8-year-olds learn about self-image and gender stereotypes. 11-year-olds discuss sexual orientation and contraceptive options. In the Netherlands, the approach known as comprehensive sex education starts as early as age 4. You never hear an explicit reference to sex in a kindergarten class. In fact, the term, what's being taught here is sexuality education rather than sex education. That's because the goal is bigger than that, says, I'm not going to try to read that, an expert on youth sexual development for Rutgers, WPF, the Dutch Sexuality Research Institute behind the curriculum. It's about having open, honest conversations about love and relationships. By law, all primary school students in the Netherlands must receive some form of sexuality education. The system allows for flexibility in how it's taught, but it must address certain core principles, among them sexual diversity and sexual assertiveness. That means encouraging respect for all sexual preferences and helping students develop skills to protect against sexual coercion, intimidation, and abuse. The underlying principle is straightforward. Sexual development is a normal process that all young people experience, and they have the right to frank, trustworthy information on the subject. There were societal concerns that sexualization in the media could be having a negative impact on kids. We wanted to show that sexuality also has to do with respect, intimacy, and safety. Beyond risk prevention. The Dutch approach to sex ed has garnered international attention largely because the Netherlands boasts some of the best outcomes when it comes to teen sexual health. On average, teens in the Netherlands do not have sex at an earlier age than those in other European countries and the United States. Researchers found that among 12 to 25-year-olds in the Netherlands, most say that they have wanted and fun first sexual experiences. By comparison, 66% of sexually active American teens surveyed said they wish they had waited longer to have sex for the first time. When they do have sex, a Rutgers WPF study found that 9 out of 10 Dutch adolescents use contraceptives the first time, and the World Health Organization data shows that Dutch teens are among the top users of the birth control pill. According to the World Bank, the teen pregnancy rate in the Netherlands is one of the lowest in the world, 5 times lower than the United States. Rates of HIV infection and sexually transmitted diseases are also low. There are multiple factors that likely contribute to these numbers. Easy access to contraception is one. Condoms, for example, are available in vending machines, and the birth control pill is free for anyone under age 21. But there's also a growing body of research that specifically credits comprehensive sexuality education. A recent study from Georgetown University shows that starting sex ed in primary schools helps avoid unintended pregnancies, maternal deaths, unsafe abortions, and STDs. Proponents of the Dutch model argue that their approach extends beyond those risks. The brand of sex reflects a broader emphasis on young people's rights, responsibility, and respect that many public health experts say is the foundation of sexual health. A 2008 United Nations report found that comprehensive sex ed, when taught effectively, allows young people to explore their attitudes and values and to practice the decision-making and other life skills they will need to be able to make informed choices about their sexual lives. Students who have had completed comprehensive sex education in the Netherlands were also found to be more assertive and better communicators, according to an independent health research agency that conducted a study of the Dutch programs. We have to help young people navigate all the choices they face and stand up for themselves in all situations, sexual and otherwise, said Robert Vandergag, a health promotion official at Central Holland's Regional Public Health Center. At the same, I'm not going to pronounce that. At the school, a group of kindergartners sit in a circle as their teacher, Marion Jacobs, flips through a picture book. The pages contain animals and bears and alligators hugging. Why are they hugging? She asks the class. Because they like each other, one girl answers. Jacobs asks them to think about who they like the most. Several kids say their mom or dad. One girl names her little sister. A few name other children at school. How does it feel when that person hugs you? Jacobs asks. I feel warm from the inside, one boy replies. It's like there are butterflies in my stomach. Lessons like this are designed to get kids thinking and talking about the kind of intimacy that feels good and the kind that doesn't. Other early lessons focus on body awareness. For example, students draw boys and girls' bodies, tell stories about friends taking a bath together, and discuss who likes doing that and who doesn't. By age 7, students are expected to be able to properly name body parts, including genitals. They also learn about different types of families, what it means to be a good friend, and that a baby grows in a mother's womb. People often think we are starting right away to talk about sexual intercourse with kindergartners. Sexuality is so much more than that. It's also about self-image, developing your own identity, gender roles, and it's about learning to express yourself, your wishes, and your boundaries. This means the kindergartners are also learning how to communicate when they don't want to be touched. The goal is that by age 11, students are comfortable enough to navigate pointed discussions about reproduction, safe sex, and sexual abuse. Let's not talk about sex. In the United States, sexual education varies widely from state to state. Fewer than half of U.S. states require schools to teach sex ed, according to the Guttmacher Institute, a global nonprofit that researches sexual and reproductive health. Just last month, Congress extended the Personal Responsibility Education Program, which funds comprehensive adolescent sexual health initiatives across the country. At the same time, they increased funding for programs that promise sexual abstinence until marriage to $75 million a year. And Deb Hauser, president of Advocates for Youth, a nonprofit dedicated to sexuality education, says that sex ed in the United States still overwhelmingly focuses on minimizing the risk of pregnancy and STDs from heterosexual intercourse. And nearly 4 in 10 millennials report that the sex education they received was not helpful, according to a survey by the Public Religion Research Institute. We have failed to see that sexual health is far more than simply the prevention of disease or unplanned pregnancy, says Hauser. That narrow focus, she says, leaves young people with few skills to cope with their feelings and make decisions in sexual encounters. Not everyone agrees. In fact, comprehensive sex ed has yet to take hold in most parts of the country. Utah, for example, requires that abstinence be the dominant message given to students. It bans discussing details of sexual intercourse and advocating for homosexuality, the use of contraceptives or sexual activity outside of marriage. Utah State Representative Bill Wright has further tried to restrict sex ed. In 2002, he proposed a bill requiring that abstinence only be taught and that it be an optional subject. It passed but was vetoed by the governor. Sex ed is not an important part of our curriculum, Wright said. It is just basically something out there that takes away from the character in our schools and takes away from the character of our students. Utah is far from alone. Half of the U.S. states require that abstinence be stressed. We have created generations of people who are not comfortable with their own sexuality, says Dr. David Satcher, the former U.S. Surgeon General. That extends to parents and teachers, he says. In other places, the tide is shifting toward an approach closer to that of the Dutch. 2 of the largest school districts in the country, Chicago Public Schools and Florida's Broward County, have recently mandated sex education for elementary school students. Chicago Public Schools requires at least 300 minutes a year of sex education for kindergarten through 4th grade students and twice as much time for education at least once a year in every grade. And the curriculum includes information about topics like body image, sexting, and social media. In the Netherlands, schools aim to educate parents too. Parents' nights are held to give parents tools to talk to their kids about sex. Public health experts recommend that parents take cues from their kids, make it an ongoing conversation rather than one awkward, all-encompassing birds and bees talk. For example, they advise if you walk in on a child masturbating, don't react shocked, don't punish or scold them, have a talk about where it is appropriate for such behavior to occur. We talk about sex over dinner, said one father at a spring fever parents' night. Another said he recently answered questions about homosexuality posed by his twin 6-year-olds during bath time. Lessons in love. I'm not going to even pronounce that. teaches 11-year-olds in a recent class. Okay, I will try to pronounce it. I'm thinking it's Hasselar. Hasselar posed a series of hypothetical situations to her students. You're kissing someone and they start using their tongue, which you don't want. A girl starts dancing close to a guy at a party, causing him to get an erection. Your friend is showing off pornographic photos that make you feel uncomfortable. The class discusses each scenario. Everyone has the right to set their own limits, and no one should ever cross those limits, Hasselar says. There is an anonymous question box in her class during Spring FIFA Week. Students submit questions that teachers later address in class. Nothing is taboo, Hasselar says. One of her students, for example, wrote, I think I'm a lesbian. What should I do? Hasselar addressed the issue in class. It's not strange for some girls to like other girls more than boys. It's a feeling that you can't change, just like being in love. The only difference is that it's with someone that is the same sex as you. And in fact, most of the questions from her students aren't about sex at all. Most of them are curious about love. I get questions like, what do I do if I like someone? Or how do I ask someone to go out with me? Questions like these are taken just as seriously as the ones about sex. Of course, we want kids to be safe and to understand the risks involved with sex, but we also want them to know about the positive and fun side of caring for someone and being in a healthy relationship. Let me see this. Okay. That's why you'll find teachers discussing the difference between liking someone as a friend and liking someone. There's even a lesson on dating during which a teacher talked about how to break up with someone in a decent way. Please do not do it via a text message, the teacher said. After elementary school, these students will likely go on to receive lessons from a widely used curriculum called Long Live Love. In the US, adults tend to view young people as these bundles of exploding hormones. In the Netherlands, there's a strong belief that young people can be in love and in relationships. Says Amy, I don't know, I'm not going to pronounce that. An American sociologist who was raised in the Netherlands and now studies cultural attitudes towards adolescent sexuality with a focus on these two countries. If you see love in relationships as the anchor for sex, then it's much easier to talk about it with a child, even a young one. So let's see.
It would seem more that they're getting benefits at a young age, not by the topic itself of sex, but rather the recognition that the opposite gender is just as important as you are. At a young age, you find kids hitting each other because, well, not all kids, but some kids are, they tell themselves a sort of soft solipsism, meaning that they believe that they're the only ones exist. So a program such as this would, in its essentiality, would only benefit kids of a later age, around 9. But 8 or younger, it would more benefit kids in what I think they're benefiting from this class is not the topic, but rather getting kids to recognize each other as individuals, getting each other to recognize, even though I don't like your tastes because they're feminine, or if you're a girl, I don't like your taste because they're masculine, or a girl saying, well, I like your taste as a boy because they're masculine. It shouldn't be taught exactly why they're boy and girl. Just simply, you don't have to teach. You don't. It should be taught rather. Okay, so to work together as a team, as the faculty should look at it more. We need to teach the kids to recognize each other as participants in a community.
Right.
The ability to say, you may be the opposite sex to me. It doesn't matter. We're going to get the job done, and we're in kindergarten or grade 1, and crafts shouldn't be isolated. It shouldn't be boys versus girls were better. It should be I could party up with whatever girl or boy in the class. That should be all it is. Not teaching them why do you feel that way around Johnny, and then the teacher tells them to associate that with a private urge. If these teachers actually had a brain worth the weight it has in the cranium, they should have actually recognized that a boy having a odd feeling, an anxious feeling, going to school and I'm going to meet my friend. It has nothing to do with what's between their legs. It has nothing to do with them being a boy. It's just simply it's the electricity that has to do with recognizing you enjoy this person's company simply because they're an individual, because they're another person, because the brain is capable of more sociability and instinct because you're with another person, whether they're male or female. So when you become friends, that sensation becomes heightened. But rather we want to focus on telling them, well, that you're talking to the other teachers in the faculty lounge. They could be gay at this age because they have these feelings.
I don't understand why they just think they need the school curriculum to teach their kids all this stuff, as if they just don't think the parents are capable of raising their kids right and teaching them the right way and leading them down the right path to where they're not over sexualized, but at the same time they're not sheltered and they understand how to go about things the right way. Like my parents definitely didn't shield me or anything like that, but they made me aware of the consequences and explained it to me in such a way to where it was like, all right, you are a growing person and you have these feelings growing within you, and there's a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do this. But they definitely didn't teach me that the right way to do this was to basically, well, and it seems like what most of the teaching today is, if you're going to do it, just put on a condom or something like that. That's not what I was taught at all. They just stressed the consequences behind it, and it was like, oh, you make your bed, you sleep in it, and because of how my parents taught me, I have stuck on the straight and narrow the entire time. There's definitely a way to go about doing it, and I say my parents did a fantastic job. And I'm 30 years old. I'm still waiting for that special woman, and I haven't slept with a lady since. And I don't plan to do it until I find that special lady. But parents are very capable of teaching their kids these concepts. And not saying that schools should not be able to teach their kids, but I mean, you should at least have a healthy involvement with the parents at home too. That kids gotta be exposed to it as early as 4 or 5, and places like the Netherlands, and I just don't buy that garbage. I wasn't exposed to that till I was maybe 9 or 10. I wasn't exposed to that at 4 or 5 years old. There's no point. It's not necessary. I understand that all kids are different. Yeah, you gotta take that into account. But I just don't understand why there's this need to reach kids about this at such an early age in places like the Netherlands. I mean, they can do what they want to do in their own country, but it's absolutely not necessary. It's not like we've had a bad culture in like the places like the United States. We didn't have this sort of liberal mindset today, like in the earlier days in the founding of the United States, and society got along just fine. I understand that times change, and I'm not arguing against that, but generally speaking, parents knew what to do with their kids, and for some reason, it's got to the point to where, you know what, we know better than you. Let's take over the curriculum. Because it's not even just that they know better than you in teaching your kids about sex. They think they know better than kids about. They think they know better than people about a lot of stuff. That's the reason why for things like, I don't know, for like welfare, they think they know better than a lot of people on how to take care of themselves. They want to, say, instead of you making your own money, instead of you learning how to fish, we'll just give you a fish and you'll just live off welfare all your life. We know better than you. You're not smart enough to figure it out on your own. So we'll give you this free stuff and we'll have you depending on us. It's just this whole notion that you just got these people that are these elitist hypocrites, these elitist, how should I put it? These just, they just like to think that they're the answer to everything, that you're just some stupid follower that need to be guided and held by the hand with everything. We need to give you we need to give you everything like your food and water. We need to teach your kids. You can't do anything without like the public school system or without the government these days. You can't do anything without them. They just think people are just incapable of doing things in every aspect of their lives. And it's just getting worse. It's getting out of control. But I mean, this is kind of like really digressing into a whole number of different other subjects, because the original point of this hangout was me just talking about being positive and being celibate. But it definitely is interesting where this type of discussion can lead. It can lead in so many different places. But I just want to get back to this whole thing about being positive about waiting until you're ready to have sex at the right time. Because look at me. I'm 30 years old. I ain't got no woman pregnant, no STDs, no nothing, no none of that nonsense. I don't have some lady trying to hit me up for child support. I don't have this legal system in the United States that's biased against men and stacked the deck against dudes who may want to see their children but they make it very difficult for them. See, there's a number of different issues that I've avoided because I've just used basic common sense. If you don't want to deal with these sorts of situations, just control your urges, control your desires, keep your pants up. As Tommy Sotomayor puts it, take your Johnson and go home.
Yeah, on that actually, you can derive that. You can actually take that train all the way back to your other pet topic that is abortion.
Yeah.
Encouraging conservative attitudes towards sex to save it till marriage encourages people to want to have a family. The earlier people, on an average, the earlier you have children, the more likely it is you'll be a part of the statistic likely that you or your wife or woman or whatever, your girlfriend, or if you are a woman, your boyfriend will either leave you or will tell you to get an abortion, or your parent will tell you you're not keeping a kid in my house. So having an early pregnancy will will summarize that, will either cause your parent, if you haven't left home yet, to force you to move it, get rid of it, or your boyfriend if you're a girl, or girlfriend if you're a guy. And so early age, it's a bad idea all around. Of course, people will probably argue with me saying, well, no, we're teaching them contraceptives. Get your rubbers.
Yeah.
Well, but you can't really trust a teenager in heat. They're going to do it, and they're more likely to, just, did you remember? No? Oh, well, whatever. And they're not even talking. That's a Hollywood conversation. What actually goes on is nowadays the girl is taking control of the sex in a car or wherever they are, and the guy is just letting things take their place, and they're not even out. It doesn't even pop in their head. Hey, rubbers. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you have a major boom in childbirth, is because they're not talking about it. It's just, hey, I'll meet you at your house, and as soon as they're in the door, where's the couch? Where's the couch? That's it. There's
Exactly.
did you get the rubbers?
Exactly.
It's only $5 for a roll. Where did you get the rubbers? No, they don't even talk like that. Parents think they talk like that. They don't. It's where's the couch?
Yeah, man. I get really tired of hearing this nonsense about abstinence doesn't work, and like when they talking about like for keeping abortions down or keeping pregnancy down, I'll say abstinence doesn't work. Like abstinence works when it's actually done. When you don't do it, it's not even abstinence at that point. That's just basic logic. If you don't do or engage with us in the act of abstinence, then it's not abstinent at that point. Okay, if you get the urge to have sex and you initially said you were going to be abstinent, you get the urge to have sex and you give in to those desires, then you weren't being abstinent at that point. That's not a problem with abstinence. That's a problem. That's a you problem. That ain't got nothing to do with the lack of effectiveness of abstinence at all. That's a you problem. And this is just basic freaking logic that this goes over people's heads. There's no reason why something this basic should go over their heads. I say abstinence doesn't work. Yes, it does if you actually do it. If you actually refrain from the act, nothing's gonna happen. I mean, how does it get any more basic and any more common sense than that? It doesn't. The problem is people want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have it both ways. If you want to prevent pregnancy from happening, but still engage in sex at the same time, then you're going to have to do something like get like a total hysterectomy or get castrated or something. That's the only way that can happen while still having sex. You just got to remove your reproductive system entirely. You're not going to be able to, outside of stuff like that, you're not going to be able to have sex and not have the risk of pregnancy happening. It's not going to happen. You can't have it both ways. If you want to have that 100% preventable pregnancy, just suck it up and say, okay, yeah, maybe I have this desire right now, but it's not worth it. It's just not worth the risk, and it's not worth the problems. It's not worth the baggage. And then keep your pants up and go home. But if you're willing to accept the risk that comes with that, if you're willing to say, okay, you know what, I'll use contraception or condoms or what have you, but if something happens from this and pregnancy comes in to play, then I'm going to take care of my responsibility and bring this child into this world. I understand that risk is there, but I'm going to accept it and bring this child into this world. That's perfectly fine with me, and I would not have a problem with that. Have all the sex you want, use all the contraception you want. Just don't throw kids into the middle of it and kill them because you wanted to get a fling, just because you wanted to fulfill your personal desires. Stop trying to have it both ways. This is the reason why I'm so adamantly pro-life, is because I get sick of people making these excuses, because that's what they are. They're excuses. It's not about the fact that, well, they can come up with all these excuses all they want to. They'll say the child is not human, or the child is not a person, and the child's a blob of cells, and just a million arguments they give to justify abortion. It's not even about none of that. It's about the fact that they knew what they was doing from the get-go, and because it didn't go the way they wanted it to, now they want to make excuses and take the child out. Because if you're going, it's just a matter of personal responsibilities, what it comes down to. It is possible for you to suppress your urges, to suppress those desires. You don't have to act on them whenever you're not ready to engage in a risk. But there is no such thing as you acting on those desires and there's no risk to them at all. And no child is going to come into, there's no risk of a child coming into the picture outside of being castrated and getting a total hysterectomy or something along those lines. Not outside of things like that, you're not going to be able to have sex and not have that happen. People want to have it both ways. They're not ready for a child, but they want to be like, you know what? I don't care. I just have that desire right now. I have that urge right now. And that urge will be satisfied whether I'm dealing with the risk of a child conceiving or not. And that's just me, to me, that's just the epitome of selfishness. When you are so consumed with your own personal urges, you're so consumed with your own personal gratification that you will use abortion as an out because it didn't go the way you wanted to.
and you're gonna make up all these excuses in your mind that it's not a person, a child, it's a blob of cells. If it's early in pregnancy, it's okay. They're just pitiful excuses. You know dang well what's there in the womb as a child. You know dang well what you are doing. There is no excuse for you trying to have it both ways. Some people even say like, well, why should they get castrated or get like a hysterectomy? They may want to have children later on. And it goes back to the point again to where you just want to have it both ways. You want to have children, possibly, but you want to be able to kill children at the same time when you're not ready for them. That's just such an ugly, ugly position to have. That's just an ugly belief to have. That your offspring is disposable whenever you're not ready for them. It's all about you. And I would never, ever go into this, go into intercourse with the mindset that there is no possibility that a child will be conceived. I'm going to be a man, accept that, and raise my kid. Of course, provided that more than likely God, in my hopeful prayer, God leads me to the right woman, and it doesn't turn out she's pro-abortion, and if she's not ready to have the kid, kills our child. I pray that God leads me to the right woman. Should He have that as a plan for my life, and she's pro-life, and she understands that if we go engage in this act, then it's God's divine providence that this child was supposed to be here at this time, and we're going to bring this kid into this world and do what we are commanded to do and raise this kid, or at the very least, give this child to another loving home if we're not ready to raise the kid ourselves. But I understand that concept of not having it both ways. And I'm not going to say that it hasn't been difficult for me to suppress those urges. I'm not going to just sit here and pretend like it ain't been hard, because it has been hard. Anything that's worth doing is going to be hard. It is often hard to do the right thing. But just because it's hard to do the right thing, there's no excuse to not do it. Do the right thing for yourself and for it's just the right thing for yourself and for the child that could be conceived. If you're not ready to have a child, then just do the right thing and just bite the bullet and just suppress your urges. It's tough, but I mean, come on. There's no reason a child should die because of your selfishness. No reason at all. And I think the whole idea comes down to the fact that people are often pressured to fit into a certain mold in society about sex. They're basically expected to more or less have sex by the time they leave high school in most cases, or at least by the time they exit college. It makes you look like you're just one of the boys or just one of the girls. It makes you look like you're just this person that's just cool, you're just this person that's down to earth. It makes you just look like this likable individual that can really understand where they're coming from. Like, man, I hear this talk all the time when I'm around certain dudes, and they be like, man, I hit that, and all this other stuff. And in the back of my mind, most of the time, I'll just stay silent in these conversations and just be thinking in the back of my mind, like, my goodness, are we this much of animals? It's just absolutely insane. But as I said earlier, there is joy and fulfillment to be had in being a virgin and being celibate. And it makes so many things in life easier. It means you are much more likely to go into another relationship without any baggage at all. Like, should God put a lady in front of me in my life at some point, it's just going to be such an amazing joy. And looks like Remy had to go. So if he's listening on the outside, God bless you, man. Thanks for coming. But I really want to make this more of a discussion with people on the opposing viewpoint. That's why I called it a hangout, because I mean, the whole point of it isn't just for me to talk, but for other people to join the conversation. I said earlier that if people want to enter the conversation, just send me a message over G Plus, and nobody sent me a message. So it's there's really not much I can do, but I'm gonna go ahead and end this hangout because it doesn't seem like it's really going much of anywhere. It doesn't seem like anybody's gonna join. Maybe I'll try it another time and see if people want to join the conversation who has a more opposing view rather than sitting in the chat talking garbage. But I'm gonna just end this chat like this. If you're a virgin or celibate, you have every reason to feel good about your position. Don't let anybody tell you different. You don't have to be this. You don't have to get into this mindset that for the individual, sex is a need, because it's not. That's just a flat out lie. It's not going to make you more healthy, or it's not going to make you less healthy. It's just no evidence to back that up. That it's a literal necessary need individually for you to have sex with somebody else. It's just not true. You can be fulfilled in reserving your body for that special someone that may come along. There is no better joy than that. But of course, if you're a person who was one who had sex, and you're like, man, this isn't the way to be, man. I gotta stop doing this, and you decide to go the celibate route and refrain for a little while, and then if you feel like you've done things the wrong way and you want to go things the better route with being celibate, then that's great. But I'm just want to be a voice out there to being positive about virginity and celibacy, being a voice out there that's contrary to the common view about sex education, the common view that being like just engaging in things like one night stands, or engaging in things like maybe sex after a date or things like this, or the fact that if you really love someone, then you'll have that sort of sexual intimacy even before you're ready to lock them down, settle down with them. There is absolutely no reason to think you should sex should be a necessary element for those who are not married, or a necessary element for you to have a good relationship with somebody. If like you're just dating somebody and you may be dating somebody for a number of different years, maybe 2 or 3 years, but during that whole time you didn't have sex at all. I mean, you're not married to that person. What you doing sharing your bed with them? You can have a very fulfilling relationship and don't have sex in it. Lots of people have done it. I have a friend of mine who's raised two daughters, all right? Both of them remained abstinent until they were married, and they had good men who wore their purity rings, as well as her daughters who also had their purity rings as well. And lots of people out there have done this. You're so used to seeing this idea that, well, kids are just gonna do what they're gonna do. So at least they should be safe about it. They should have You're so used to hearing the idea that that basically kids are more or less going to be having sex. It's going to be more or less impossible for kids to avoid it. That's the attitude and just the whole notion that's put out there that, well, you know what? You ain't going to stop them. And the attitude is perpetuated over and over again. Like kids are just gonna be just inevitably tied to having sex, for lack of a better word, as if they're just gonna be inevitably susceptible to giving in to their desires, and that's just not true. Lady, a friend of mine raised two daughters. Both had their purity rings. Both have great men in their lives. I love men who respect women and wear their purity rings, and like they take a stand as real men to stand on a foundation that's very hard to stand on in today's society, because it's not easy standing on the foundation of virginity and celibacy in today's society. That's not an easy thing to do. As I mentioned earlier in this hangout, people will talk all day about how hard it is for someone like a homosexual to come out the closet. But I say it's just as hard, if not even hard, for someone to be open about their virginity. But there's nothing to be ashamed of with being pure. I mean, you have the right to be pure, okay? That is a right that you have. It ain't nothing to be ashamed of. It ain't nothing. In fact, it's a shame that I have to even say it shouldn't be anything ashamed of. Because the whole paradigm has shifted, I'd say maybe within the last 30 or so years, to how virginity and celibacy was something highly, highly respected and highly, highly valued. And now it's like the complete opposite is if, like back in high school, and I was a sophomore at this time, I talked to some kids in my class, and at the time, I told them straight up that I was a virgin because the subject came up, and they was talking to them. I don't remember how the subject came up or why it came up, but it nonetheless came up. And when I told them that I was a virgin, they were surprised. I'm 30 years old now, and this is me being a sophomore in high school. So this was 16 years ago. This subject came up. 16, no, no, maybe my math is wrong. No, 14 years ago. So I'm 30 years old. It's 14 years ago. So the subject came up. So even 14 years ago, they thought it was strange that I hadn't lost my virginity by the time I was a sophomore in high school. Don't you understand how bad that is? And this was 14 years ago that was bad or unusual. Imagine just how unusual it is now. If it was that unusual 14 years ago, then just how much more unusual is it now? It's crazy. But that's the general attitude in today's society is that either you're gonna lose your virginity before you leave high school or before you leave college. And if you don't, then and I have been insulted, like because I'll have these hard views, these hard, uncompromising views about abortion, and I'll be like, and heck, the way I talk about the abortion issue, they'll people get suspect about if I am a virgin. They'd be like, "You must be a virgin," and I'm like, "So what if I am? Would it matter that I wasn't? If I wasn't, would it matter? Would it affect my arguments one bit?" But but the thing is, the point is, they think the whole attitude that I have is indicative of the fact that I'm a virgin, and it literally has my arguments literally have nothing to do with my virginity. A friend of mine who was also uncompromisingly pro-life, he's not even close to a virgin. We do not have the same views on sexuality, but at least we do agree that we don't have it, that people shouldn't have it both ways. He sees like if you're gonna lay down with a woman and a woman's gonna lay down with a man, then then they better dang well accept a kid coming into that as a risk and dealing with that. So you got people out there who are not virgins who do enjoy having sex quite often, who understand the concept of, you know what, I like having sex, but I'm an adult at the same time. I understand that there's risk of what I'm doing, and I'm not going to kill a kid because of it. But what's so interesting is that despite people like this being out there who are non-virgins, who are uncompromisingly pro-life, I still get attacked for my stance and they center it back to the roots of me being a virgin, despite the fact that non-virgins can have this view. They center it back to my virginity. And matter of fact, I was in a recent Facebook exchange with this pro board, and when I was talking about personal responsibility and about not having it both ways, and he asked me a question. He said, "What do you know about personal responsibility?" And I told him, "Well, I've not only talked the talk, but I've walked the walk. When I wasn't ready to risk bringing a child into this world, I didn't engage in the act, plain and simple. And for up to my 30 years in life, I've practiced the same thing. Up until my 30th year of life, I've practiced the same thing. I'm still a virgin." And when I responded to him with that, he said, "Oh, that explains a lot." As if he was surprised that me being a virgin was a product of my pro-life stance. And this guy even went on to say that you don't know what the heck real responsibility is about. You're a virgin. You ain't never done anything. How could you know what real responsibility is about? He actually said that to me. I just found it laughable that he thought that me refusing to have sex, me using common sense and saying that me not wanting to take any risk to bring a child into this world, so I refuse to have sex, means that I don't understand what real responsibility is about. I just thought that was so laughable. And then as the conversation progressed, his attacks got even more and more ridiculous. He even started saying something like, "Well, it's maybe not because you've chosen to be a virgin, it's probably because they probably just turned you down and you just wasn't the kind of material that they would want to engage in sexually. So it's not the fact that you've chosen to avoid sex for 30 years, it's just that you're just a square and you couldn't pay a woman to sleep in the bed with you." And these were the sorts of attacks he made on me. I just found it laughable, to be quite honest, that he was so upset about my basic common sense stance with sex and my basic common sense stance with with my pro-life stance and being against abortion. He was so upset at my basic common sense stance that he started attacking me personally. And this is not unusual. I've faced these kinds of attacks for years. In my entire adult life and staying celibate and staying as a virgin and promoting positive virginity and promoting positive celibacy, I've been viciously attacked. There is a thing called virgin shaming. It does exist. You hear about slut shaming all the time. Well, you know what? Virgin shaming happens too. And I always say a lot of people out there or don't want to be vocal about it because they don't want to be looked at as this unusual person. They don't want to be looked at as this individual who maybe don't have the goods, maybe ain't really I don't know if I want to say a real man, but it's gotten to the point to where a lot of attitudes in our society about sex has made it be that until you've become a man, when you've finally had your cherry popped, that's when you've stepped into the world of manhood. That's the typical paradigm. And certain people have been silent about that. You might have people around my age, heck, it may even be people older than me who's been silent about their virginity because they don't want to seem like the oddball who hasn't, quote unquote, become a man or something like that to that degree. But I hope there's more and more people out there who are not ashamed of their virginity. I hope there's more and more people out there who become more vocal about it because this paradigm with abstinence doesn't work and all this other garbage that needs to be turned around because it does work. It works if you actually do it. It works if you have a trained mind because it's a matter of you having a certain type of mindset. Being a virgin isn't for the weak hearted. You got to be a strong individual to do it. Be a weak person or a weak minded person to be a virgin. You got to be strong. You got to be tough. You got to suppress your urges on a regular basis. It's not an easy thing to do, but you can do it. It can be done. Or even if you're not a virgin and you just want to go the route of being celibate at that point. It's not for the weak hearted. It's not for the weak minded. If you want to step into that realm, you can't make excuses. You can't be weak. And you got to go into it with you got to be cut from a certain cloth in order to live the celibate life or to live the virgin life. Live that sort of existence until you find that special person that you want to settle down with. Not any and everybody can just be a virgin. And I'm not saying not any and everybody can be a virgin because it's impossible for anybody to be a virgin. I'm saying not any and everybody can be a virgin because some people are just too weak-minded for it. That's just the bottom line. And I don't care who likes it or not. Some people are just too weak-minded to be a virgin. And they're not going to be able to do it. So in that sense, not any and everybody can be one. Or rather, not any and everybody can be celibate. It's some people just thinking that they're gonna be too weak to resist, and when they see that really gorgeous looking dude in the restaurant or that fine looking chick in the club, they're gonna want to do some things to those people. They just get that idea, and they're gonna do whatever it takes to get to that point. But you don't have to do that. I mean, if you, it just depends on what kind of life do you want to live. That's what it really comes down to. If, like I said earlier, if you want to live the sort of life to where you're gonna say, okay, I accept that this act comes with these risks, whether having a child or other source of baggage, pregnancy and non-pregnancy related, but you're an adult about it and you understand those risks are there, and you may use contraception in between it. I can dig that. I can dig that. I can dig people who understand pregnancy can happen and have sex. Have all the sex you want. Go ahead. Do what you want to do. It's your personal life. If you don't kill a child over it and you understand that risk comes with that, then do what you want to do. I respect that highly. What I do not respect is people who thumb their nose at biology and say, I don't care about the risk of this act that I'm engaging in. I don't care that if this contraception or whatever I'm doing doesn't work to prevent pregnancy from happening, I'm going to kill the child that's conceived in the womb. I don't care. It's all about what I want and when I want it, and I don't care what anybody says. If pregnancy happens at a time to where I'm not ready, I don't care. This thing in me, which because they refer to the child in the womb as a thing or as a blob of cells or however they try to excuse it, it's got to go. And that's just a very sick attitude to me. I don't care who you are. That just absolutely cannot be justified. I'm I've become something of one of the most hated pro-lifers on Facebook because of my non-compromising attitudes towards sexuality and the pro-life position. Because I think it's a very straightforward thing. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. This isn't difficult to figure out. If you don't want to risk drowning, don't jump in the pool. That's just point blank. If you don't want to accept the risk of drowning, don't jump in the pool. But if you're going to jump in the pool, then be a sensible person and accept that you may drown potentially. Accept the risk that comes with it. It's really that simple. That's really what it comes down to. It's a lot of things in this life are very, very simple things. There are rare cases to where things may be a bit more nuanced and you may have an area of gray with certain things, but most of the time things are pretty cut and dry. You don't want to take the risk of drowning in a pool, then don't jump in. You can't have it both ways. You can't say you're gonna jump in the pool and there's no potential risk of drowning. You can't have it both ways. And that's the same thing with pregnancy. There is no, see, they want to use abortion as they get out of jail card. I it's not necessarily a free card because abortions cost money, but it's your get out of jail card if you're not ready to bring a child into this world. It allows you to do whatever the heck you want and then take out the child when you're not ready in case it fails. It's something to fall back on. And that's just beyond evil to me. You are so consumed in yourself, so consumed in your desires, you're going to murder a child to death because all you're concerned about is getting your rocks off right here, right now. That is the epitome of evil. That is the epitome of just vicious selfishness. A side topic, but it definitely has certain links and certain relationships. Being virgin positive, it definitely has a lot of implications. It helps you avoid things like risking the possibility of conceiving a child. You don't have to live with the potential guilt of having to kill a child. It just avoids so many things. But again, it's not for the weak minded. You got to be willing to put aside your personal desires. You got to be willing to put aside your personal issues. You got to be willing to pay the price because it's a price to be paid. And a lot of people get ticked when I say this, but I don't really care. Any and everybody can just be a non-virgin. Any and every adult can be a non-virgin. It's not difficult to to live life to the point to where if you ready to have sex whenever you want to, I'm gonna have sex when I want to. I'm gonna wrap it up. That is really not difficult to do. If you have certain desires that you give into, it's not, I don't see the difficulty in that kind of life. It's more difficult to suppress those desires. Like sometimes I get hungry, or not really that I'm hungry, but sometimes even when I'm not hungry, I get the urge to eat a snack or two. When I just had a nice dinner and there's no reason for me to eat more, I get the urge to eat something else as a snack. It's easy for me to just, you know what, I've already ate, but just because I want to eat for the sake of it, I'm going to get another snack or something. Just give into the urge and just do it. And that's not hard, but it's a lot harder to be like, you know what, I've had my fill. There's no reason for me to eat now. I know I want to get a snack right now, but there's no reason for me to keep on eating and engaging in gluttony. It's hard to do the right thing and refrain from that act. It's harder to suppress certain urges and desires than it is for you to act on them. But way too many people have paid serious consequences for the fact that they gave in to those desires. So many women who gave in to their desires to have sex and aborted their children and faced horrific regret from their abortions. Men who gave in to their desires. And maybe they had women who weren't on board with them for bringing a child into the world, and the woman got an abortion whether he wanted her to or not, and he paid the price. But it all started out because did not want to control your urges. It sounds good in the beginning. It sounds good at first, but the implications of it are drastic. And yes, not every woman regrets an abortion and all this other stuff. I hear that a lot, but I don't really care whether she regrets it or not. That doesn't justify her doing it. A rapist don't have to regret raping someone. That don't justify a rapist raping someone. Whether a woman regrets her, whether if a woman doesn't regret her abortion, that doesn't mean that what she um, did wasn't wrong. So the lack of regret has nothing to do with anything. But with all the implications that comes with the talk of sexuality, with being a virgin and a non-virgin, there are definitely um, positives on both sides. Yes, you can definitely, I guess a lot of men have experienced, not a lot of men, just, but a lot of people in general have experienced certain shifts in attitudes, certain shifts in behaviors when they've had sex, and it's done positive things for them. But I think the potential negatives by far outweigh the positives if you're not ready to deal with them. There are a lot of positives to being celibate and being a virgin too. There are a lot of positives to refraining from sex. Don't let anybody tell you different. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, and I'm really running out of things to say at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the hangout, but I'm gonna end it on this thought. If you're a virgin or a celibate person out there, don't be ashamed of your virginity. Don't be ashamed of you feeling good about it. It's something that should be celebrated, and there are a lot of positives to it. And like I said earlier, it's not for the weak-minded. But if you want to be a virgin and celebrate, you can do it. It's doable, and it saves you a whole lot of trouble. And when you getting to the point to where you feel like you've overcome your desires, your urges, then it inspires you that much more to overcome them more and more and more in the future. And it gets easier, it really does. It's just a matter of taking that first step and then taking another one and another one. It's a little bit of steps taken, just tiny steps, and it becomes easier. And before you know it, you'll be able to suppress your urges at any moment's notice and feel positive and feel good about the choices you've made. Because the positives and feeling good about your celibate actions, and if you're a virgin, staying a virgin, the positives about that is just numerous and just overwhelming in number. But this has been the 30-Year-Old Virgin Hangout. Thanks for watching, everyone. God bless, and see you next time.